Hey, welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Pit Therapy Podcast. I'm Kyle, and we've got Trevor, and we have a special guest in Daniel from, I guess right now the band Die Young, but
Somebody hit somebody!
you played in a ton of other bands down in Texas, right?
Yeah, I play guitar in Will to Live.
Yep.
And more recent, like in the last 4 or 5 years, I was doing a collaboration with Scott from Earth Crisis in a band called Tooth and Claw. And we've had other side projects in Die Young, like we had like a vegan D-beat band called Band of Mercy. Had mostly like Die Young guys, but like Tommy, who was in Axis, and now is like Gouge Away and Angel Dust. He was the drummer in that for a minute.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know about that because we didn't really tour or anything, so we were just fucking around, having fun.
I was just listening to Band of Mercy. It's sick. Like, it's
oh, really?
stuff.
Oh, cool, man.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's a hidden gem for people. Band of Mercy. When we did one West Coast tour, and we did a handful of like Texas and Mexico shows. And the fun thing about it was the further west we went, because the whole premise of the band was to be like the vegan Motorhead or Carnivore, like just massive shit talking. Like when I came up with a song idea, it would be something that made me laugh, And the further west we went, the more people didn't think it was funny, but the more vegan people were, and they didn't think it was funny. Like, what got into Daniel? Why is he writing this fucked up stuff? And then we'd play Texas, South Texas, and people would be like, yo, man, like, that shit was hilarious. I'm not vegan, but can I buy your shirt? I'm like, yeah. So like, we were trying to kind of do something different with that. And it was, but we didn't really hit the road hard enough. We were just like not at a time in our lives where we could do stuff like that anymore. So, but that was a band. And then my original band when I got into Texas hardcore as a teenager was Finer Truth. I played guitar in that band. I don't know if you ever heard Finer Truth, but
listening to it again today.
Oh, cool, man.
Listen, man, when we do this, like, I try to figure out who you are, right? So I'm actually on your website right now, Daniel Austin. I was listening to your stuff. I listened to Mainlander. I listened to your other stuff.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Your solo project.
Yeah.
So yeah. Trevor has like 4 restraining orders because of this podcast and how he tracks people, but it makes for good content. But seriously though, like I just moved down to Texas 5 years ago. Grew up in Salt Lake City, but kind of dove into Texas, hardcore and learn about it. So
cool.
Found out about you guys' Will to Live and instantly connected with it. Cause as one thing we try to do on this podcast is learn the scenes around the country and how unique sounds are and things like that. And I've absolutely fallen in love with, what Texas hardcore is,
Yeah, I feel you, man. I always feel like we are very lucky and it's kind of our own world. Because the rest, I think people know Texas better than they used to. But I mean, back in like the late '90s or early 2000s, bands would come through and just say, "We didn't expect this to be so awesome," and like the bands to be so good because that was pre-streaming and pre-social media. Everything was very personal, and you kind of just heard, "Go play Houston" or "Go play this tire garage in San Antonio because these rad kids do the stuff there," and or "Go play Laredo," and I think a lot of bands came down and were just really surprised,
Yeah. Go ahead, Trevor.
I think you guys have a weird dynamic, right? Because we always hear about East Coast hardcore, but East Coast hardcore, everything's so connected and so close, like the 6 or 7 states that are right there, they all can fit inside of Texas. So like Texas hardcore, you have like you said, Laredo, Houston, you can go to San Antonio, up to Dallas, wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
That would be like if Connecticut drove down to Massachusetts or New York up to Vermont or something like that.
Yeah. And then not only that, then you got a band like Judiciary who comes out of Lubbock.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what the?
They're way better than you would think coming out of Lubbock.
Right. So, Texas is I don't even live in Texas anymore, but I always feel I'm a Texan, you know what I mean? Like I just, wherever I go, it doesn't I've lived other places, but people are like, yeah, that dude's from Texas. You know?
Yeah.
So where do you live
But-
now?
I'm in
I mean-
Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh, it's late for you then, man. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
just an hour later. It's all good.
So how did you? So you from Texas then? That's kind of where your
Yeah.
upbringing was, or yeah.
Born and raised in Houston. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get into this kind of music then? Because like people I work with here, they're, like my boss, for example, at work, it's, it's all country. It's Pantera.
I will say, let's see. I got into punk probably first, obviously like with the rise of the Green Epitaph and Green Day stuff in the early 90s. I was in probably like 5th, 6th grade. I mean, you go from Nirvana to like the Offspring Smash to, and not understanding the punk connection with any of that. But then I remember a dude on my block he ended up being this original singer in the first incarnation of Finer Truth when we were in like 8th grade. But he got into Bad Religion. And I got Bad Religion, The Gray Race. And that was the first album I got that I understood to be ethically something different, like with the lyrics and everything. And then I kind of pieced, like this Offspring thing, Epitaph Records, and they're all kind of connected. I can hear how they've influenced each other and, but then, I got into like Metallica and Slayer and Pantera, and not realizing how much punk had influenced all that, right? You get into the Misfits and you don't realize. But I will say for hardcore, it was 8th grade. That same friend who got me into Bad Religion, who lived down the street, he had the Ozfest, 97 VHS
Sick.
tape. And like, we were interested in like Coal Chamber, right? They were on there. And what was it, like Sepultura and Biohazard, maybe, I forget, but Earth Crisis was on there, and they just stood out to me, man. Like their presence as a band, like how intense they were, and then the X's on their hands that they were wearing at Ozfest, and I'm like, what's this about? And so I learned about straight edge, and I just thought that was really cool. So the first hardcore album I got was Earth Crisis, Gomorrah's Season Ends, and which is a very metal hardcore introduction to hardcore, right? But then I got into like I got the self-titled Vision of Disorder, Sick of It All, Built to Last, because my mom was on the Columbia CD House membership, and I was like, hey, you can get however many CDs for $1. So she allowed me to get that Vision of Disorder and the Sick of It All albums that were the only hardcore things I could find on there. And, I loved those. And then from there, you just get into Victory Records and Equal Vision Records. And so Strife, Snapcase, One King Down, 10-Yard Fight, Converge, like all this. I just went down that rabbit hole. And back then it was just all mail order. If you couldn't find something at a local CD shop at the time, which I will say in Houston, there was a dude named Bucky who ran the indie section at this record store called Soundwaves, and you could go in there and just preview stuff. But Bucky was a hardcore dude, and he ended up running a booking collective called Hands Up Houston that would book a lot of emo stuff, but they would do like Cave In and bands like that used to come way back in the day. And so you go in there and Bucky's like, hey, have you heard this Undying? Have you heard American Nightmare? Have you, and he'd get like the promo posters from the record label. So I'm like, yo, like that Bane poster, I need that. And he's like, here, you're the first one to ask. Takes it off the wall, So there was this very personal connection to getting into bands like that. And for me, you go into the shop, you go to the back listening booth, they let you open it up, and I'd read the lyrics when I decided I want to buy something or not. So for me, like with Die Young has always been a very lyrical band. That's a kind of, there's very few bands that if I don't like what they're saying or how they're saying that I can really get into, even if I can't understand how they say it. It's just like I want to look at what they're writing, and is this band trying to contribute something vital,
Yeah.
So that was how it began. Really, it started with the Ozfest VHS, and then I started getting those indie label albums like off Equal Vision and Victory, and then I would go down to Soundwaves, and Bucky would tell me what's cool, and I'd check it out, and then you start going to shows, right? And I was just very lucky to get in, be 15, 16 years old, going to my first show was that I saw as a hardcore show was Hatebreed playing at this club in Houston called The Abyss, which got shut down for fire code violations. But The Abyss was like a hole in the wall that had, like, back in the day, Nirvana, Pantera, Nine Inch Nails, like, would play there when they were coming up, when they were nobody, and I saw Hatebreed play there, and there was a local hardcore band called Offset Proof that was like heavily inspired by like Bloodlit and like Victory Records type metalcore, Turmoil and stuff like that. And Eric, who was the bass player of Die Young and Will to Live up until recently, was their bass player. And Chris Dawson, who is now the guitarist, one of the guitarists in Die Young, who's been in and out of the band over the years, was their guitar player. And so we saw them just play a local show with like Hatebreed, not on a tour package, doing a DIY tour. And it was probably like 80 people. It was the first time I saw hardcore dancing and all that. It was crazy.
It's wild.
Yeah. And then the next show we heard Hatebreed's coming back in 2 months with, and this was, so at that very first show, Rob from Will to Live was there, passing out like stickers and demos and t-shirts for this band he was starting called Scarred for Life. Because originally Will to Live was called Scarred for Life, but somebody tried to sue him. They already had the name. So it became Will to Live after like a few shows. But he was there, and so I'm like, I see these people with like Scarred for Life shirts, and like, what's going on? And so Scarred for Life, they had New Earth Straight Edge Crew, which is like the straight edge members of Will to Live at the time, and they booked the I think it was the Guilty by Association tour, which was Earth Crisis headlining, Madball, Hatebreed was playing second, and originally it was supposed to be, I think, also Strife, but Strife broke up, and so Scarhead took their place. And so that was my second show, and then Will to Live was the local band, or Scarred for Life. So that was my second show, 1998, that I ever went to. And I didn't know about the thug thing and hardcore. I heard Earth Crisis, I heard Sick of It All, and like, to me, that's like punk, and all of it was very forthright, ethical, intelligent. And then I see Scarhead open that show, and I'm like, what is going on? They had their whole DMS crew on stage. They were talking about how they support the straight edge scene, and they love straight edge strippers, and come to their hotel after the. And I was like, what is this? Because I was like 15, but then it's like, then you had Earth Crisis, who at the time was the biggest band in hardcore. Headline all of that.
Yeah.
So that was a wild time, and dude, I mean, it was interesting to think of, like, that show probably had like 400 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like how packed, like how big it was at the time. Because I think unless it's a fest, those bands aren't going to pull that anymore.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy. So this is, you said, like 98 roughly?
Yeah.
And you're like 16 at the time, give or take?
Not even, like 15. Yeah.
15, 16.
I was a freshman in high school. Yeah.
Okay. So you're already starting to write. You're already starting to play music a little bit, because you mentioned your first band, Finer Things.
Finer Truth. Yeah.
Finer Truth. Yeah. So you switched though, right? In 8th grade, you were like a Nirvana grunge type. And then actually in 2001 is when you guys went down the metallic hardcore, right?
Well, Finer Truth started. We played our okay. So there were two incarnations. There was like the 8th grade. We played our first, like the first live show I ever played was in my friend's garage for his birthday party. And I remember because I have pictures from this, and it cracks me up like how little we were. That dude that his name was Jeff. He lived down the street from me. That he was the singer in the original Finer Truth. We were like, yeah, kind of a grungy rock band. And this will sum it up. There was one song where I had just heard Earth Crisis, so there was like this really hard, more metallic type song. Then there was these other like Nirvana type songs, and we covered Tyler by the Toadies as our closer. We were in 8th grade. So, and then I remember I was wearing like a Deftones beanie.
Sick.
And I think a Korn Life is Peachy shirt. So like I was in between all of these subgenres in 8th grade, right? Just finding all of it and being excited about all of it. And or maybe I had a Pantera shirt on. I mean, it was something like that. And but
sure.
I have to go back and look at the pictures. I know I definitely had that Deftones beanie from when I saw them at the Abyss on the Adrenaline tour with Far and Orange 9mm. That was like 7th grade. It was like, I think back to that. That's still one of the coolest shows I ever seen. Yeah. So then that band kind of went nowhere, and within that year, we got rid of some people, and I wanted to revise the band as a straight edge hardcore band. But being that my introduction to hardcore was so metallic, I remember it was my 16th birthday. We played our first show as the new Finer Truth, where clearly all we listened to was Earth Crisis, Another Victim, One King Down, and Turmoil, and Harvest. And that was probably like our biggest influences. And we started playing shows with, Will to Live and Eye Against, and became kind of a staple in the Houston scene. And in 2001 was when our CD came out.
Got it. Yeah. So were you doing vocals in both versions, or when did you start doing vocals?
No, I was strictly a guitarist in Finer Truth.
Okay.
So always, yeah. I think what happened with Finer Truth was I got a little frustrated about, I was one of the younger guys in the band. There's two guys that were like 1 to 2 years older, like the singer and the other guitarist, and they were straight up trying to go to college and stuff. And I was going to college locally, but they were going to move away, or at least one of them was going to move away. And we were really slow at writing music. So I think we were a band from, like 1998 until 2002. But I think we only ever wrote about 12 songs, and some of the songs would be like 5 minutes long. It was definitely hardcore in spirit, but we were trying to be a little like more metallic and technical and musical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I got really frustrated with that, and I got really frustrated in thinking, oh, this band stuff that we do on the weekends is cool. Like we had started playing out Dallas and Laredo and San Antonio and all these places in high school on the weekends. A lot of times, like our parents would have, like at least one parent would have to go, because we were so young. But I got the bug. All I could do was daydream about touring. And I also didn't really like some of the lyrical direction that band was going in. And I had told that dude, hey man, like what about if I can write some lyrics? And he was like, nah, So I had lyrics, like concepts for songs I was writing. And I kind of thought it would be nice to start a new band where the music's a little more simple and punk inspired. I was thinking one like example of what came to mind was the song ATF Assault by Integrity.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
It's like a minute and a half long. It's a really simple song. And, I'm thinking around 2001, I want to start a band like that. And also I remember thinking, I heard Carry On, Life Less Plagued, and American Nightmare, like they're first 7 inches and the black background music. And I thought, oh, this is kind of simple enough. And then, you know, I was still thinking with all the things on my mind that I wanted to say. Bad Religion, Suffer always came to mind. Just like easy songs, say a lot. So like that was kind of and then like by the time we started playing 2002, Terror dropped their demo. And I was like, this, you know, I mean, Bird Alive was already a big inspiration, like seeing them live and stuff. I mean, easily in their prime, one of the best live bands ever. So like I was already thinking short, fucking in your face songs like Bird Alive. And then Terror came out and I'm like, oh, it's even a little more punk sounding, you know, a little more traditional sounding. And so yeah, 2002, we got Die Young together real quick. We went on tour like 3 months after our first practice, you know.
Oh, dang.
It was like, waste no time. And I still wrote. To this day, I've written, I don't know how many songs Die Young has, but all but about 4 I've written on guitar. And
sick.
Yeah, and record on guitar. So at least the rhythm parts. So a lot of times the backbone of the band is me coming up with a lyrical concept and then having some music to go along with it that I write on guitar myself. And then we get together and practice and flesh it out. And then the guys will give me, you know, contributions or ideas of what we should edit, you know, as we go. But yeah, it was kind of like my escape from being in a band that just couldn't get things done. Like, let's make it a little more simple and play faster.
Yeah.
And just go on tour. That was the goal, you know.
You know, what's funny is, so me and Trevor, we're a little younger, you know, we kind of came up in a little different time in hardcore and stuff. But as we've been doing this and, you know, reminiscing and looking back, it's that kind of attitude towards hardcore, I think, is not as prevalent. You know, it's gotten a little mainstream. There's a little bit, I think, lost in what this was, you know, back when you all were starting it. And I think that's what made me gravitate so much to Die Young is I'm the same way. Like sometimes I just want fast, in your face hardcore that has an actual message, like,
right.
You know? And so I'm glad. I think there are bands that are kind of starting to pick it up again, but you know, we saw, for example, like No Innocent Victim in Furnace Fest this year, and that was like a huge deal to us. And looking around that crowd, it's like I felt young in that crowd, and which made me feel good, you know. But it was like, where is this? You know, where is this kind of hardcore? Like, we need this back. Like, I think it's time for these messages, for this type of just angry, you know, fast, in your face hardcore.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope we see this go in cycles, and I think it's cool that kids want to pay homage to that era of stuff, but I definitely like to see everybody put their own spin on it, you know, like definitely bring your inspiration, your influences to the table. Sometimes I get a little bummed that the bands paying homage do a little too much carbon copying. You know, like find your own voice, and maybe that takes time for artists. You know, I think I remember one of the earliest, it might've been like Maximum Rock and Roll reviewing the first Die Young album, saying this band sounds like they want to be Catharsis from North Carolina so bad. And that's true. Like that was one of the biggest inspirations for me to start Die Young. And vocally, I just love the dude's like manic approach to saying as much as you could and blowing your voice out doing it. And I remember that review said this guy missed the point because Brian, the singer of Catharsis, his message was to find your own voice. And this dude is totally stealing Brian's voice. But you know, that was my point of entry, you know, like that was like the band that I thought, I love how passionate they are about what they're saying. And that's, you know, or a band like Trial, who had a lot to say. And granted, Greg's voice is a lot more accessible. You could kind of understand what he said, even without reading the lyrics. But I loved the kind of subject matter, the fact that he actually did like historical research to write his songs, you know? So I tried to do that myself too, you know? And I would say after being friends with all these people over the years, I don't think I'm at a point where I'm still copying them. you know, certainly they inspired me to get started, you know, but
I mean,
yeah, and I would just like to see some bands like stick around to like see, like they found their thing, you know, it's them.
that's a good point, because I do think that bands who come in immediately, the first thing that you always say is, oh, this band sounds like this band.
Right.
It doesn't matter if they're so unique or different or anything, you're always going to compare. I'm like the worst at this. I've said multiple times on this podcast, I actually have issues because I'm like, I have to be able to compare you to someone so I know how to listen to you in my brain, kind of thing.
Well, you know, the genre is so big now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got what? I mean, we're looking at like something roughly like 50 years of punk.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So, subgenres just by default happen.
Right. Right. But no, I think you're onto something though, because even though people are replicating and paying homage and stuff like that, I do think that there is new flavor coming into the scene. I like where the current direction's going. I do think there was a minute there of a little bit of a downswing. It got a little bit too overproduced. We talk about this all the time. There's a lot of electronic that started getting put in it. And there's bands now that are just like, let me mic up an amp and just play, you know, like, and they're getting back to how that recording's happening. And there's Road Dogs again. You got, I know they're up for a Grammy, but Knocked Loose are freaking Road Dogs. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
it's becoming accessible. So no, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, the backlash about recording quality, it almost became like this proto black metal kind of, let's make it sound as shitty as possible and only release it on Bandcamp. And that to me got annoying real fast, because I'm like, you know, I came up in the 90s when things started to sound better and bands had more of a budget and better technology. And I'm like, everybody all along was always trying to sound about as good as they can. Now we have a movement that's saying, no, let's sound as bad as we can. I didn't get it. You know what I mean? Because if you go see a band, they sound better live. You're like, why can't y'all sound like that on your record? You know? But then the other side to that is the technology, and with all the sampling people can do, it's like not even real sounds, you know? Like, I have, being all the years I spent in the studio on different projects, I can pick out even good drum sampling, like, it bothers me. When I can tell clearly that's not a real cymbal, that's not a real snare, your drummer, because no drummer is that consistent in real life. I get a little bummed even if the songs are good.
Yeah. That's we've talked about that a lot. That like there's been bands that they've like canceled a show because they lost their laptop and couldn't like backtrack it, you know?
Yeah, you know, we couldn't have predicted this, but I guess it makes sense. But to me, there's no substitute for just like a raw punk band, or you know, like even like in hardcore, maybe we're trying to play things that are a bit metal, but we're not really that good to do it. But if the energy is right, the spirit is there, that's, you know.
And I think that's it, right? I think it's the spirit and the attitude towards it, because like when we grew up, we were going to like park shows, you know, like we played in a really, really sucky high school band, right? Like, but we did it because our goal was like, well, we love this music and we've got this little group of friends. Like, we want to play and do this stuff any way that we can. I think for a little bit, the idea was like, well, you know what? We're going to start a band and we're going to put it on YouTube and we're going to get views. And it's like, no, go back to the skate park and, you know, I don't know.
I don't like to be the old guy that just talks about how good, but I realized how lucky I was to come up seeing Hatebreed play in the Abyss. You know what I mean? And to see Earth Crisis headlining a tour that brought out more than any other band could at the time, you know, and like, and you know, the whole like the distro table with all the literature and everybody's involved in Food Not Bombs and let's go eat at the Krishna temple, you know, like that shit. What a special time, man. You know, that was cool.
I don't even know the last show I went to that actually had like a pamphlet or something at it. And I'm kind of disappointed in that.
You know, I will say the flip side of the coin is right now, I think with the Twitter, X, and TikTok and the way that's shaped everybody's minds and attention spans. Now, a lot of the political discourse we get in the scene is really rudimentary and just like sound bites. It's like it lacks the depths. And it's almost like things you're expected to say. And that's a bummer too. So, for me, like I just try to have real conversations with people. Obviously I've written a few books and I put those on the table and people are kind of bewildered to see books, at shows. And, but yeah, obviously I hope people don't stop reading. We obviously all listen to a lot of things. But
it is interesting because, so I wanted to ask you about kind of your lyrical content and how you got started with that, because you started writing lyrics, late 90s, early 2000s is roughly, it sounds like, when it kind of began, right?
Yeah, I was probably, I was 19 when we started Die Young. So I probably had things in the works in my head for a year or so before that. So, like 18 years old, I'm thinking about songs I want to write.
I mean, there's always stuff going on in the world, but you just had like 9/11. You just had all the Middle East stuff happening and stuff along those lines. So you had a lot of stuff popping up. So what was like that first inspiration for you? Because I know that you are pretty political, right? In terms of some of the lyricism.
I think less so now, but definitely coming up when we started, it was definitely like a knee-jerk reaction to the war on terror and the Bush administration and the lies we were told. And not only that, the invocation of the terms of good versus evil and the kind of rise of the evangelical right, because I was not. My mom is agnostic. I did come from, my dad's side is German Catholic from Ohio. And he very much wanted me to get involved in the Catholic Church when I was younger. And being that my parents were split up and I had summers with him and weekends on occasion, holidays, generally I was not religious and I was very comfortable with that. But then when I go to my dad's, it kind of got forced upon me a bit to the point where it's like, hey, that's not cool. I have some questions, but that wasn't really encouraged. And I think that might have influenced. And not only that, I mean, he wasn't cool with me being vegetarian at the time. Obviously, my dad, many years later, we're real tight, and he thinks, okay, yeah, you turned out all right. It's okay, being vegan and all that. But he was worried. He was just worried. And I realized all of his criticism was out of concern. It wasn't out of some kind of religious hatred, which is kind of what I thought. But I do think that living in Houston after 9/11 and seeing the headlines in the newspaper of like an Indian man's tire shop being burned down because people thought, I mean, he wasn't even Muslim, he was Hindu, but this is how uneducated people were. And they were reacting to the threat. And I didn't, I sensed a bit of like religious tinged racism. And then obviously in Texas, we've always had the Republicans have had a monopoly on Texas politics, except for in the cities. But in terms of the state house, and they've had a very pro-life agenda for a long time, and they've made big strides in pushing their agenda. And that with all the 9/11 stuff and the stuff that just, maybe it wasn't overtly racist, but you could see how it incited people to bring out their true colors. And I think in Die Young, I wanted to push back on things like that initially as like 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old. And then, we get into the Iraq war over total lies about weapons of mass destruction. And that, I think for a lot of us, just made us feel like whoever's in charge is going to do what they want to do. They have their own agenda. It's about business. It's about oil. It's about development, not about people or justice. Yeah, so I think like that record we did, Graven Images, was very politically charged about that. And I think I was very ambitious and trying to say a lot of things on that album because a lot of things were on my mind. And we basically broke up after that LP. We put out a 7-inch called Loss, where I'm like, yeah, I tried to even like talk to this scene about this stuff. And I don't know. It's like, there are people that we did get through to and we made good friends with, or people that got like Die Young tattoos, and we did reach them, but it wasn't most people. And I just saw more people just wanting to hit each other at shows. I just felt like, I don't know what's going on here. So we bowed out, you know. There was a sense of disillusionment and loss about, you know, growing up where you know, my favorite bands were bands that had a lot to say, but at the time in like 2008, 2009, it felt like it was veering towards a less intellectual focus and more of a style and violence kind of obsession. And I would say that was more or less the end of Die Young's overt political interests, you know. And people called us a commie band for a long time. But it's like our original guitar player, James Neely, he started the band with me. I think he's like a professor of Russian now. I mean, he took the commie thing.
Oh, dang.
He was, but I don't know where he stands on all this stuff anymore. But he's an actual academic by profession now. But very smart dude, whether you agreed with him or not. I was just always like interested to hear him tell me about the Civil War in Ireland. And, you know, he introduced me to like Noam Chomsky and stuff, but it's like, I was trying to process all this stuff I was learning about environmentalism and American interventions that cause bigger problems. And, you know, I've got a lot to say about it and the religious right or whatever, but I never called myself anything other than vegan and straight edge, you know. Like, I never said I'm a socialist. I never said, I mean, I said I'm an atheist, but even at this point in my life, I don't really care about saying that because it doesn't really explain what I actually believe about the human inclination for spirituality, right? So, but yeah, we never called ourselves this kind of band or that kind of band. And I wasn't even interested in being like a vegan or a straight edge band. I just wanted to be in a band with dudes that were like wanted to play some mean shit.
Yeah.
And who liked the aspect of, we're passionate about a dialogue. We're passionate about just we want to provoke thought. But we got called by a lot of people like commies and all this stuff. And it's like half the time we were playing with anarchist bands, and then not even like I can't even think of many bands that actually call themselves communists, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
but people would say that about us, and I'm like, we never said that. There was one dude, he was in the band for like 3 years, but he didn't write the lyrics, you know what I mean? So
well, so I'm really curious about the 2002 to 2009 because you guys were everywhere. I think I read you played something like 700 shows or something like that, something crazy. Yeah. It's like 100 shows a year.
Well, there's a couple years we were a full-time band.
Yeah.
We might have got for 3 months a year odd jobs, like day labor stuff, or my grandfather used to run a company that I could work in his shipping warehouse, you know, when they needed extra help, you know, so I would pick that up. If not, I remember a couple years I was like a cart pusher at Costco. That's like what I could get, you know.
Oh, dang.
For like the holidays or whatever, you know. And you know, we would scramble and find whatever we could when we went home. But yeah, we kind of built it up. Like 2002, we started out just renting a van, doing a week here, 2 weeks there. We got to the point where, you know, we could pay the van off and not have to spend our own money like it's a vacation. And we were like, okay, this is going well. Maybe we should look into buying a van. So like when we signed to Immigrant Son Records at the time. We put out our first proper long playing record, The Message. We thought, let's buy a van. Like, we took the money from that album release show and we bought a van. And that was one of the best investments we ever made as a band, because we watched so many bands buy a piece of shit van for like $1,000, and they would play 3 shows and break down, and then they couldn't afford to stay on tour. But what we did was, I think we put like $1,200 down on a used van that was like maybe 3 years old. I think it had been like a rental van, and I sold my car and financed that, and that was my personal vehicle. But then the band stayed on tour enough. I think we started doing about 3 or 4 months a year at that point for a couple of years. And then it was going so well that we're like, could we quit our jobs and just, and, you know, and then we got to deal with Eulogy to do Graven Images. And we were like, let's go full time. Like, let's just fucking go. And, you know, strike while the iron's hot. And for 2 years, yeah, we did about 200 shows a year for like 2 years in a row. Did a lot of international stuff. Really made a point to kind of just go anywhere where people were interested. Like I think at the end of it, we had played like 35 countries or something like that.
It's wild.
And I mean, a lot of that's Europe, a lot of it's South America. A lot of it, we did one tour in East Asia, which was like probably still one of the coolest things I ever did in my life. It was like 6 countries in East Asia. 3 weeks.
So which part of those countries, you know, we don't talk to a ton of bands that make these. Like, we've talked to like Tommy Green from Sleeping Giant that talked about some of those tours in like South America, but what corner of the world that you guys played in surprised you the most?
I will say, I think that Latin crowds are like the most loyal. I mean, to this day, when I look at our listener stats, it's like we played in Chile, like 3 shows. Still, like, a lot of people from Chile look us up and are listening to us. And, you know, obviously we did a lot of tours in Mexico, but not like just like Monterrey, or like, you know, sometimes like places that people never even heard of, you know, like Querétaro, and we played Guadalajara a handful of times, and Matamoros, and like places that where technically there's like a cartel civil war going on. We just went and played them. But yeah, when we went to Asia, we did like 2 shows in Tokyo area in Japan. We did Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We did Taipei, Taiwan, which didn't even have a hardcore scene. It was like all the bands sounded like Fat Records punk bands. But it was such a cool place, man. Like I remember, you know, you could just, in places like Taiwan and Thailand, it's like the street food is like all vegetarian or vegan anyway, because everybody's Buddhist. I remember there was a 2-story vegetarian buffet in Taipei, and it's like the most fucked up I got on food. Like, there's another story, like with a whole other buffet. Let's go up. It's the same. Like, we pay once and you can go. So we, I remember stuff like that. It's like just the travel aspect of it was so cool, and just having little adventures like that. But then we played with Hong Kong, and that was before Hong Kong got transferred back to control of China, which has been catastrophic for our friends there. And I feel really bad because I don't know how well they're able to have punk and hardcore shows there now, but it was really thriving at the time. And so that was a really special time. You know, like we played Russia 2 tours, and you know, I don't think any smaller, at least not smaller American bands, are going to be going to Russia anytime in the coming decades with the way things are. So,
yeah.
And we had like the craziest fucking shows there, like bomb threats against the shows, not Nazis threatening the shows, because like everything that's like American political hardcore, straight edge, vegan, like they consider that part of the anti-fascist movement. And so they would try to ruin our shows. So like half the shows end up being like secret shows, but kids were just fucking stoked. And it's crazy. I don't think Die Young's ever sold as much merch anywhere as in Russia. It's crazy. You know, you just don't think.
Jeez.
Yeah, they were just so amped. You know, it was awesome. So, Yeah, like I don't know, like we did, Colombia, Peru, Chile, Panama, Costa Rica a couple times. A lot of stuff in Mexico. We did Alaska, kind of before anybody really started going there. And that was really cool. Um, and then obviously all the standard European stuff, like everything from Norway to Croatia, and
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
That's
I don't know.
crazy.
We're very, very lucky. Like people would ask us, and we would do our best to go. Because a lot of times we weren't even really coordinating money. We just thought it would work out. A lot of times it did,
Just go
sometimes it
for
didn't.
it.
Yeah. Sometimes, like when you go to a place like Malaysia, we knew that we weren't going to make any money there. I think, uh, but playing Hong Kong and Japan made up for it. So we just kind of knew that some places were going to be a loss in terms of, but the shows were so cool. So it was still a win, Thailand was amazing. Like we played during the New Year's festival called Songkran. It's like a water cleansing festival where people are just having a giant water fight with like water guns and hoses and buckets. And so we had to wrap, you couldn't even drive into downtown Bangkok. We had to wrap all our gear in trash bags and tape it up so water couldn't get in and carry it through the crowd. And then there's like European tourists and Thai people just like shooting you in the face with a water gun while you do it. And it's crazy. It's crazy. And then we played in the middle of that. I remember this video where I've got like a super soaker and I'm just on stage shooting.
That's awesome.
And it was like sold out shows in downtown Bangkok during that. It was crazy,
That's insane.
Stuff like that, like I don't know how we'd ever be able to replicate that kind of just those possibilities. It's hard to coordinate for one, but everything's changed everywhere. So
yeah,
for a variety of reasons.
So did I read that you guys were banned from Canada for a minute?
Yes. Twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2006, maybe 2007. I think it might have been like 2007. We were booked in Victoria, British Columbia, which is like the island next to Vancouver. And we were just playing like Seattle and then going up for just one Canadian show. And, we always did really well in like Vancouver area. So the guy that actually booked that show was like a film production guy. He had a film production company and he just booked shows as a hobby. Like, how DIY hardcore is. Everyone else has a real job. And so what he did was, because back then the Canadian government was not cool with American bands coming in. They thought everything was commercial. They didn't really understand DIY. And because the law is now that if you're not playing a commercial venue or a venue that sells alcohol, you can tell them that and they'll just let you right in. But back then, they want to interrogate you. They want to tear your van apart. A lot of times we would have somebody from the Canadian side come meet us in Seattle or Bellingham and get our stuff and drive it across themselves. And we'd go with an empty van saying we're just tourists. And sometimes that would work. This time, though, we didn't have anybody to really get our stuff. So this dude said, let's do a fake video contract. So your record label is gonna pay me to make a music video for you, and we're just renting out a space to do a music video. But he was renting out the space to have a show.
Throw the show.
Yeah. So we were just gambling on them not looking that up because this is like 2007. People weren't that internet savvy, but what it was, I think we got to, it was like 3:00 West Coast time. And at the time we were on Eulogy Records based out of Florida. And, they were like a full-time label back then. But it was 3 hours later, their office was closed, right? So at the border, they wanted to call Eulogy and verify with somebody that they'd actually committed to this contract. Nobody picked up the phone. So they thought we were just playing them for fools. So they basically just, after a couple hours, tore the van apart, and they said, "Yeah, we got these waivers. You can sign them and leave." And we're like go into Canada? They're like, no, you can't come into Canada. And I'm like, well, what is this? They're like, this is an exclusion order. It's a year-long ban for lying to us. And we're like, can you prove that we're lying to you? And they're like, we don't even really care. We just don't want you here, So we had no choice. Like, they sent us right back, but it was a year ban. Like, we got banned for a year, right? So what do? We were really upset about that. So we waited a whole year, like to the week. Let's book a coast-to-coast Canada tour to make up for this, right? So we go in there like the week our ban is lifted, but we tried to do everything proper, like booking venues that don't serve alcohol, like non-commercial venues, DIY, like community centers, houses, like things like that. And we tried to prove that to them. I remember we played Maine, like Portland, Maine, or something, that metro area. And then we were driving all the way to Halifax, Nova Scotia overnight. Because it's like 7 hours from the border or whatever. So we drove from Portland, Maine to the border at, I think, New Brunswick is the border there. And we got held there for 6 hours overnight. So then by 9 in the morning, these people are saying, yeah, we don't really trust you guys. You were banned. We're like, yeah, we know we were banned. We're trying to be legit this year. This is all the shows. They took 6 hours. And they said, here's what we'll do. We'll let you in for one day to play this one show in Nova Scotia. But the promoter has to go down to the Artists Guild. It's like some government-sponsored artist guild in downtown Halifax and buy some kind of membership for us as an entity. So he had to spend he picked up the phone and he's like, okay, I'll go do it. He went down, he bought the guild membership, faxed it to the border station. They said, okay, cool. So we'll let you in for 24 hours. So they made us sign another document. You can be in Canada for 24 hours, and if you don't come back and reapply to go to your other shows, you will be arrested and banned for life. So, on our way to Halifax, we just immediately go, okay, who's ready to get banned for life? Fuck this place. Fuck these border guards. So we get in, we go to Halifax. We have an amazing show. Everybody made their money back and then some. It was like a really good show. And then we had to drive to Quebec City, which was I think 10 hours or something. So we had to drive overnight. And there was no time to go back and reapply for 14 shows and be told you can only come in for one, So we just were like, let's go. Let's see if they catch us. And I remember almost every show on that tour except for Thunder Bay, Ontario, which is Meth Head Central in the middle of nowhere. Every show on that tour was amazing except for that one. And we even after the Thunder Bay show, we were on our way to Winnipeg and we got pulled over by a cop and I was driving. And it was such a stereotypical Canadian TV show kind of situation. Because he was like a trooper with the Mountie hat. And he's like, oh, hey, sir. He was so nice. He was so nice. And he goes, hey, are you guys a rock and roll band? And I was like, yeah, we're a rock and roll band. And I'm just playing it cool, assuming they don't know that there's a warrant for our arrest. And he didn't even look at my documentation or anything. He just goes, well, I said, oh, sir, I was, just curious why we got pulled over. And he goes, oh, I thought you didn't have your seatbelt on. And I did have my seatbelt on. And I just go, yeah, look. Oh, my mistake. You guys have a good day. So we start driving. And then he's walking back to the back of the van. And we didn't have a trailer or anything. We would live on top of our merch bins for the most part. Take the seats out and then just leave one seat in to hold the equipment back. But Kahan, our bass player, he had this army surplus. It was like an ammunition holder like lockbox. And that's what he kept all his cables and pedals in. And the guy could see it through the back window. And so the trooper goes, oh, excuse me, sir. One more thing. What's this ammunition box you got in the back here? And I go, oh, that's just what our bassist keeps his pedals and cables in. And he goes, oh, it makes perfect sense. You guys have a good one. So we're just like, I mean, when the dude was walking up to our window, I'm telling, all right, guys, we're about to go to Canadian jail, you know? And what happened was we got to Winnipeg, had an amazing show, kept going. We got all the way to Vancouver. And at the show in Vancouver, like the paddy wagon, the whole patrol pulls up and arrests us while we're loading in merch. And the one cool thing was, since we were all just real calm and cooperative, you know, they took us downtown to jail, like with all the like tweakers and stuff. I mean, people like spitting on the cops and like threatening them. And we were in this cell with them, and these Canadian cops, I guess, had some humanity. They're like, man, these guys, they just don't, they're not whacked out. Like, let's get them out of here. So they took us like with shackles and everything down to the airport, where they have a holding cell for like basically immigrant detainees, like people without proper documentation. And so we were held there overnight, and it was like spotless. There was cable TV in the cell. There was a National Geographic library in the cell. They happened to bring us cookies that were like accidentally vegan. So I was like eating cookies all night. It had a door on the bathroom, and it was like squeegeed clean in there. Like it was, so we got lucky. And then we had a private trial with the immigration services the next day. And they're like, all right, look, you guys have been pretty cool. Why did you disobey the Canadian government on purpose? And we're like, look, we tried to not. We tried to do this legit. We tried to coordinate with the promoters and make sure it was legal, and it just didn't work out. And we just thought it was too much red tape, and we don't really make money, you know? So the judge was like, well, look, how about I just ban you for a year? Not your whole lives, like we told you we were going to. Like, well, that's fair. We'll take that. And so what we lucked out was when we got picked up by the cops at the show, the cops talked to the promoter. The promoter like kind of stepped in, and because they were going to impound my van, which would have been really expensive and really sucked. And who knows what would have gotten stolen out of it, you know? And they let the promoter take it home, and he drove the next day. We got delivered to the border of British Columbia and Washington in shackles. We were straight up deported. And our promoter from Vancouver showed up with our van, picked us up, and then he went on tour with us down the West Coast. And
hell yeah.
Yeah. So like we didn't, and the crazy thing was the people who were like waiting to get into the show saw us get arrested, and everybody felt really bad. And they asked, could we still buy their merch? So he was like selling merch out of our van.
Sick.
And he paid us for the show. And like, I mean, and then we got in the first time we were in Revolver magazine was because of that. You know, it was like, turned out pretty great. But yeah, we got very lucky. But it was, you know, looking back, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But
That's
you know, now
wild.
like we went up to Vancouver in 2016. We did a little West Coast tour, and we booked Vancouver because everyone said like, look, man, we know we've got this down to a science. The laws have changed. They're a lot more lenient. Man, they just waved us in 5 minutes. It didn't matter about our history or anything. So we got to
just for tradition's sake, pick a fight and be
dude,
you gotta ban me for a year, man.
I was worried because I also have had issues where in my animal rights activism days, I was doing events at like concert tours and stuff for PETA when I worked there. And they would send me up there on work to do like a literature table that because we're sponsoring Rock the Bells Fest or on tour with Roz Against or whatever. And or on Warped Tour. I was on Warped Tour with them, and I would get detained at the border every time, and they want to go through my phone, and they tell me you can't stay here and work. And I'm like, yo, man, I'm legit working for an American nonprofit. I'm gonna only come here and buy your food and get out, you know. And they let me in every time, but I got harassed a lot for years. But then going back with the band, they were like, "Oh, cool." It's like, huh. Well, if only it could have been that easy back in the day. But
yeah,
that's great.
it's incredible.
Yeah,
that's incredible. We love hearing stuff like that. So
yeah.
So I wanted to jump back into the new music you have coming out. So March, Die Young will be releasing an EP. How did that come about? What was the draw to release new music now? Because I think, let's see, No Illusions was 2016. Yet in, I guess, a single back in like 2019-ish, right?
Yeah,
a couple songs. So
part of it is, Mike, the drummer of Die Young, is also the drummer of Will to Live. So Mike and I will work on writing new material. And what happens is I might write something that's a little too melodic or too complicated, and it gets vetoed from being in Will to Live or something like that. Because Will to Live's got to be simple and heavy. You know what I mean? So sometimes when I'm writing for Will to Live, I just come up with other things that are a little too busy, maybe a little too fast or whatever or even too many open chords or whatever for Will to Live. So I end up with Die Young songs on accident. But also, like Rogelio, who's our lead guitarist, and Mike, and Mike in particular have been like, "Are we gonna do Die Young again?" Like, they just love the band, so they wanted to. And Rogelio actually wrote some riffs, and we collaborated on a couple songs on this new EP where he gave me some riffs, and I'd flesh out the rest of the song. And that was cool because I think all the songs on this EP have a different vibe. Like, they still sound like Die Young, but there's different character of each song. So there's that. And then also, man, playing with Will to Live, I was surprised how many kids come up to me that, I might not even know, that, especially the younger kids. That's always the one that floors me is kids will come up and say, "I got into hardcore because I heard your band on the Tony Hawk Project 8 soundtrack." And I'm like, "Really? Wow." And they're like, "No, for real. Like, I didn't know what hardcore was. Like, cause all the other bands on there were like punk or metal, but this was like
hardcore.
I could tell it was different, And I'm like, "Oh, wow." So, the fact that, even if it's like 2 or 3 kids here or there that will come up and say something to me of that nature, that would be like, man, maybe we should, like, that's always motivating. Because there's certainly been eras of the band where I felt like we just weren't connecting. So it's nice to know that we did on some level. But I think it's a mix of a lot of things. It's a mix of just having the inspiration kind of naturally come to me to write this kind of a song again. Also with Die Young, I have to have a concept of what I want to say thematically. Like, we've written a lot of songs. I've said a lot of things about a lot of issues. I have to have some new angle to bring to the table. I'm not trying to repeat myself. So definitely with things in the world, with all like the dozens of conflicts. I mean, people talk about 1 or 2 conflicts in the world mostly right now. But I mean, the world is not anywhere close to being in a state of peace. And we think, we're civilized people and we're a technologically advanced global society. Why can't we all get along? And I think there's a lot of tension there that's worth exploring about, and so I wasn't trying to make a statement about any answers or any specific opinions. I was more like trying to portray perspectives of why certain sides in these conflicts feel the way they do. And I related it through the lens of like personal stuff that's happened in my life, like failed relationships or conflicts I've had in my life. To like kind of portray these conflicts in a really personal way, like in a really like if people still have the urge to read the lyrics at all, like I hope they read them and are just like, ouch, like this is some deep human shit right here. Because that's what I was going for. But I had these ideas kind of brewing, and I kind of took the personal and the geopolitical and was hoping to present a perspective that's not something you can put in a box.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean,
so yeah, there was inspiration, like from the guys, from maybe
Sure.
fans, and just on
Just
occasion
felt like
this
the right
kind of-
time.
Yeah, this kind of stuff still comes out of me on occasion. So
it's
I had to do
it's
it.
kind of funny because we talked to Rob last year, and I
Yeah,
think we
yeah.
called him like a legend or whatever, and he was like, I don't really like hearing that because he's like, I still have stuff to say, you know.
Yeah.
And so I kind of put my foot in my mouth because I was like, oh shoot, yeah, like, you know. But
Well,
I'm grateful for that, right? Like I'm grateful that you guys, because we need that, right? Like this is music that we look up to. These are messages that you know defined us as well when we were younger, and like we want to hear y'all's voice still because this is important stuff that you're saying.
That means a lot. I mean, because one thing I'll say in hardcore is very few of us ever get a reward out of it that's anything that we can apply to our adult lives in terms of like a paycheck or like,
Right.
you know, we don't all end up like Jamie Hatebreed. You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah,
more power to him. He knows how to play the game. But for most of us, like I know a lot of my heroes, and I've been to their houses, and I see we've got good stories, but it doesn't, you know, we after this isn't the prime thing we do in our lives, we have to like get our adult lives together and find a way to balance doing this and being a responsible member of society. But the reward is making the connections, whether it's just with dudes we meet along the way, or maybe like dudes that we grew up listening to that take an interest in our band. And then, you know, that's very validating. But the funny thing is with most legends, it's like we're human, we got problems. And if you knew us on a daily basis, it might be a little disillusioning, but it always is a very kind thing to hear. And you know, like when the young bands say shit like that to us, we're like, no, we want to play with you. Like, just ask us to play a show with you. Like, this is your thing now. Like, we're just lucky to be here still, you know. And that's how I feel about it. I mean, it's like, oh wow, somebody regards anything I did as being halfway important. That's cool. Does feel a little weird, but like, yeah, like we wouldn't, like with Rob and me, like we wouldn't say to one another, let's do another record if we didn't have something that we just had to say. I mean, that's the only reason to do it. I think there are reunion bands that can get together and not ever write anything new, and maybe they shouldn't because it wouldn't be as good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like Die Young and Will to Live are still improving.
Yeah.
Because I think we're still like, we're just not done, you know? It's like we're still hungry for something, to say something, you know? And I don't ever want to be the band that's still trying to come back and be involved if we're not contributing something that is really worth it.
You know, I really respect that take. That's actually something that Kyle Fisher from No Innocent Victim said when we were chatting with him, is he said, we're not going to be the band that just comes and plays one-off shows and stuff like that. If we're coming back, we're coming back. There's going to be new music. There's going to be involvement. We're going to do something. So, you know, it's awesome. It's awesome that you're willing to put that out there and to continue on. So, question that I have for you, the single Messianic Age, why'd you choose this one over some of the other songs on the album?
This time around, I think Die Young used to be run kind of like a benevolent dictatorship, I hope, by me, where I just did whatever I wanted. Because I think there were many years where people looked at the band as, hit up Daniel if you want to go on tour. He's always needs people, because like they go on tour and they realize, oh, we're broke. And after 3 weeks, it ain't fun anymore, you know. But this time around, I tried to get opinions from everybody about the artwork, about the production, about the mix, about even while we were writing the songs, about the structure of the songs. And when I was asking the labels involved, what song do y'all like the most? I asked my wife, what song do you like the most? Messianic Age was the most commonly picked, like one that stood out. Like immediately, people were bobbing their heads. The next single we're doing is called "Until You Die," and it's more of a traditionally fast kind of melodic hardcore punk song. People said that one was also really catchy, so we're like, okay, I like. But I think with Messianic Age, I wanted to put out a song that shows, yeah, we're older, like we might be middle age now, but we still play hard, you know. Like, I mean, to me, it's an ass beater of a song. So
yeah.
I just want to
That
show people we're not
opening
playing
riff.
around, like we're coming back for real, you know.
That
That's
opening
awesome.
riff is nuts. So the first time I heard that, I was like, "Oh, this is yeah." It was
Yeah.
good. It's good.
Good.
So
Good. We hit the mark then.
yeah, absolutely. So
what about plans? What does 2025 look like for Die Young, for you personally? Any of your projects or anything like that? What does 2025 look like?
We're gonna do some record release shows in March in Texas. We have 3 of them booked. We're gonna actually announce it. I don't know, when do you think this podcast is coming out?
It'll be out not this Monday, but the next Monday. So
Okay,
what's
so
that?
we'll announce these shows will be
10th.
announced before this
Oh, sick. Okay.
hits everybody's ears. Yeah, we're gonna. Well, we announced the Houston one already, but there's San Antonio and Austin, and we're in talks with like Dallas, Monterrey, Mexico. Although all this stuff about, I don't know how much that's affecting things at the border right now. So we're kind of gonna, but we definitely had we used to play there a lot, like home away from home. Some of our best friends are from there, and it's cool that they still want to see us down there. But like Mick Allen, like we want to hit all the Texas scenes, and we have kind of open invitations to do all that. So we're gonna make it happen. We got some offers from like Alabama, because 2 of the guys that tour with us for many years are based out of Birmingham.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So we're talking about going back out there, and and then there's like basically anything that we can do. Wherever there's interest, if the offer makes enough sense, we'll do our best to make it happen. So we're pretty much open, and that's the same thing for Will to Live. It's like we just kind of. It's not like the early days in either band where you tried to make things happen, but if the offers keep coming, and they're like good enough to where we would be dumb to turn it down, like we're doing our best to make them happen. But being that everybody's in their 40s and stuff, it's not as easy. But well, we just feel really lucky because we still do get these kind of offers on occasion, and I think with the new record, the idea is ride the wave.
Sick.
So whatever we get asked to do, we're gonna do our best to do it. Definitely want to be able to play for our old friends and fans, and also the new kids. I think we as a band have something to offer anyone who loves hardcore. So. There's that, and then I also have. You mentioned my project Mainlander. I've been sitting on four new. The whole thing with that band is it's transformative covers.
Oh, okay.
So they're none of the songs are original. They're just my version of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I have almost totally mixed 4 new Mainlander songs. It's like there's a Cure song in there. There's a Chameleon song. There's
sick.
What else? Nick Cave song. There's what's the other one? Oh, Stooges song.
Nice.
Yeah, but they like you wouldn't recognize them unless you knew the words. You know what I mean? So, and I do a lot more singing, like not screaming but singing on them. So I've been working on that. But I'm not gonna. That's a band. I don't think it's very niche. So I'm just gonna do a digital release on that once all this initial buzz of the Die Young stuff wears down, and maybe people will like it. Maybe they won't. But I'm not. We're not. That's something I do out of my own pocket. Like it's not like there's a label putting all this investment in it, and we gotta try to do right by them. It's just I do it for fun, So, but there'll be some of that later this year. Yeah, other than that, man, I mean, Will to Live is still open to offers. We've got a show coming up in San Antonio with Cavalier Conspiracy, which is cool.
Yeah.
Kind of a dream come true kind of situation, playing with the Cavalier brothers,
Right.
And then there'll be the Young shows, and there's a lot of Young stuff that we're talking about doing. And
so with 2 members in Birmingham, are you breaking news that you guys are playing Furnace Fest 2025 this year?
No. Well, one of the one dude that's still playing with us, one of them still lives in Birmingham. The other guy that's from Birmingham is Kahan, who he moved to Chicago, but he plays in Coliseum and he plays in Yautja. He's got a lot of, and he's in a new band called I think it's Blistering. He's in a lot of bands, but he's up in Chicago now. So, but no, we did a Furnace Fest like pre-show like a few years ago. It was really good. But we have never got a proper offer to do the fest.
Come on, Furnace Fest. Come on,
whatever. I mean, they said last year was the last year.
Listen, man, they made a lot of money. We were there last year. It was great.
Yeah.
So,
but hey, if they ever want to, maybe 2026, we're open for it. There you go. Offer at least,
We'll clip this part of it and send it to the guy that runs it. And be
do it, please. Yeah. I know he knows. They did book Legion, which is Jeff and Kahan's band from Birmingham. I don't know if you ever heard Legion from Birmingham, but yeah, that's Jeff and Kahan who played in Young. In fact, Young and Legion used to do like shows and tour together, and I always be like, back in the day, why don't y'all write some stuff for Young? And I think they were a little intimidated because Young already had this big catalog. And then I hear the new Legion and be like, that could have been a Young riff. Like, what the fuck? No, but they did. I think a year or two ago they had Legion on, or at least for like one of the official pre-shows or something. So I mean, cool. They know those guys. If they want to ask, we're open. But yeah, I mean that's really what it is. It's like I'm 42. If kids want to see us, we'll definitely do our best to make it happen. If not, we're just gonna chill and do grown-up shit.
That's boring. Let me know if you get a Dallas date booked. I will be there.
Yeah, we're looking at it's not booked, but we're looking at May. So
okay,
sick.
I don't have like any shows planned for May, so yeah, dude, I'm there. It was kind of funny. I was telling Trevor when I saw Will to Live, because then I saw Bitter End last year too, and so I was like, man, I've almost seen the like Texas trifecta. As Young left now, and yeah,
for sure,
it's good stuff.
So when does the album Wanted to Believe officially drop?
I think we're gonna drop the full stream on March 14th.
Sweet.
Hopefully the records will be shipping by then. Like our first record release show is on March 21st, and we've been promised we'll have them. But we might get them at the same time as the label. So people at the shows who pre-ordered might not have their record yet. We'll see. It's going to be kind of down to the wire because of vinyl. Like we were told way back, oh yeah. And then there was like a test pressed issue that came up. So we got 2 batches of test press, and things just got held up. I almost feel like when I was talking to labels, oh yeah, it's another week. I'm like, yo, we can't keep adding on weeks, like we already booked these shows. So they're like, okay, they promised they're going to get them. So we got the CDs. The tape is coming out on Corruption Records out of San Antonio.
Okay.
So they're going to have those. Those are quick turnaround. So yeah, it's just a matter of waiting on the vinyl, but the streaming, we're going to have that out before we play the shows. So
sick. Well, we could keep you here for another hour. I mean, we didn't even touch on your powerlifting. We didn't even touch on your books. We didn't touch on a lot of stuff that you do.
That's all good, man. It's all good.
But we'll have to have you back another time to get into all
that.
Yeah,
happy to.
So we seriously appreciate you. Shout out either like your personal stuff, where people can find Young, anything you want to shout out here at the end, and we'll tag it all too on the social medias kind of thing.
Yeah, my main thing is I'm just on Instagram as Vegan X Meathead, and there you're gonna find me posting about powerlifting and vegan supplements and maybe some travel and food and and occasionally Dayoung and music related stuff, Will to Live stuff. Then also Dayoung's at Dayoung TX, and Will to Live's at Will to Live TXHC, and Tooth and Claw's at Tooth and Claw Riffs, and yeah, we don't do Twitter. We just fuck, or X or whatever. We just fuck it. We just don't do it. So, Facebook, if you're 40 plus, you can find us on there too.
Nice. So
sick.
Well, that's
cool. It. Yeah, man. Appreciate it. And man, hopefully I can catch you in May. So
yeah, that'd be great, man. I'll drop you a line if once we get confirmed.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, man.
All right,
appreciate you.
Thanks. Likewise.